Okay, I can't talk anymore. But it's very important. And to be honest, I've had tours come through. I've had Boeing come through with a group of about 7 people. We did a walk through our facility. I'm always open for tours to show some of our products or our processes. And with Boeing, when they came through, they said to me, "I can't believe how respectable your workers are to the lift truck operators and vice versa." I said, "Well, it's their livelihood, so they learn to respect each other very quickly." And one thing they did note that whenever there was a lift truck with material on it, the pedestrian always stopped and let them go first. And they asked me, "Why is that?" And I said, "Well, they're feeding machines. And the machines make money for us. That pays our bills. That pays us." So it was very quick education on why they let the lift trucks go first, even though the pedestrians do have the right of way. I'm not saying that you still once in a while have conflicts. That does happen. But overall, I'd say probably about 90% of our employees are very respectful when it comes to that. So I've got my contact information here for anybody that wants to reach out. If you have any questions, you want to come for a tour, look to see how we're set up, I'm more than willing to arrange that, share that with you. I know the presentation can be sent out as well and shared. I have no issues with that. So thank you, and let's be safe out there. So any questions, and I'll pop it back to that screen for anybody that wants that. Oh, all right. I'll go first. Hey, Paul. For the lift operator, they get the same presentation that the pedestrians get. There's a pedestrian safety video that they watch. The pedestrian and the lift truck operator both watch that same video. And we also do safety talks twice a year on pedestrian lift truck interactions to try and keep it fresh in people's minds. Whenever we have an incident regarding to lift trucks, we also reference back to that and use that as part of a constant message to everybody. Okay.
I was just going to ask, yeah, metrics for incident reports compared to some of the upgrades you've done. I think wrong.
They have actually, yeah. We have our KPIs where we track all building damage, material damage, property damage, and then what's involved with the lift trucks. On top of that, we break it down to how many years of experience the operator has. One of the things I have an issue with, and I voiced this to our management team, and they've slowly changed the mentality this way, is we used to get a lot of students come in. How old are your students? 18, 25 range. They're only there for a couple of months. What do you put them on? The most dangerous piece of equipment in the facility, a lift truck, 10,000 pounds, loaded vehicle, loaded weapon. And you're going to let them drive around with very limited training, very limited experience. I know people have to start somewhere, but in my view, you don't put them on the most dangerous piece of equipment you have in your facility. So our management team, as I've talked to them about it, they started going, "That's a good point. Let's start them off somewhere else and bring other people up that have some more experience and train them." It shuts the machine down? Yes. We also have the speed limited on it. I think we're set at minimum or maximum. It goes up to 15 kilometers at the most. But our floors, we also had to play around with the bump mode because I don't know about you guys, but our facility doesn't have a perfectly smooth floor. We've got, if you've ever been past Winpak, we're always building on. We've actually got another 1/3 size of our building going on right now that we're adding on one end. We've got a explosion room going out at the other end. So our floors are not flat. There's always ridges and that. So we've had to play around with those sensors so that they don't shut down accidentally for no reason, because that happened at the beginning when we made them too sensitive. But we did have a reduction in property damage by having that put on, because now when people hit the wall, they hit a crane, they hit a piece of machinery, it stops them. Supervisor has to come out, take their card, scan them to release it. They make a note, they put an incident report in, we know what happened, we can track it and follow it. So, and the person can't say, "Well, I wasn't operating it." Your card was on there. Yes, sir. Correct?
For Canada, so do you guys provide training and certification for Forklift?
Yes, we have 2 trainers in-house that do the CSA standard, so they'll follow the theory as well as the practical. If I had somebody like Colin, for instance, who I worked with in the past, if he came to my facility and he showed me he had a certificate from another company, I would take that and I would just give him a quick test, let him do the written test. If he passes that with a 75%, then I'll get him to give me a practical demonstration and I'll accept that. We can train them in-house for that because technically if you get trained at Safety Services Manitoba, you still have to get trained on the equipment you're running in your own facility. So you still have to certify them on that machine. And that's what people don't understand a lot of times. So, yes.
So in addition to the traffic control signal for forklift and the pedestrians, is there any stop lines anywhere in the forklift line?
Just this is the ceiling ones and then the motion detectors. Every other, there's stop signs on the floors for certain areas. You have to come for a walk and see. Okay, any other questions? All right, I'll hand the mic back to Nathan when he's ready. Yeah, keep it on time. See? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That was fantastic. And I know that every time someone has reached out to me saying, hey, what do people do with forklift stuff? I've always referred them to Alex and also to Kitten Craft and Aaron and the team over there. And the answer has always been, yeah, happy to have them come in. So if you're looking for a tour, we've got some members who are willing to extend a hand and have you come out. If you are willing to, have other safety professionals come through your building and have a look at what you're doing and provide a little bit of coaching or firsthand feedback, let me know. Always great to expand that network a little bit, whether formally or informally. So, hey, Alex, thank you so much. We're going to do another short networking break, make sure everyone is fully caffeinated. And then at 10:40, we've got Iqbal Brar of IQ Safety going through managing safety in a multicultural workplace, strategies for success. This is going to be a really good one. We'll see you in a little bit. Hey, I've got the thumbs up. That means we're good to go with our next presentation, Managing Safety in a Multicultural Workforce, Strategies for Success. We're lucky to have Iqbal Brar, the President and Principal Consultant of IQ Safety Solutions, with us this morning. They're a leading provider of occupational health and safety consulting in Manitoba, and likely beyond, if you asked him nicely. Born and raised in Manitoba, Iqbal has an unwavering passion for all things related to occupational health and safety, and his entire professional career has been dedicated to our field. With over a decade of experience, Iqbal has built a reputation as a skilled and knowledgeable safety expert. I would confirm that. His journey began in the field of construction sites across Canada, where he gained invaluable hands-on experience. Over time, he transitioned into overseeing safety management systems on billion-dollar projects, responsible for developing and implementing health and safety systems, leading serious incident investigations, and managing large teams of safety professionals and overseeing large-scale projects. At IQ Safety Solutions, Iqbal applies his extensive experience to implement effective health and safety systems for companies of all sizes, particularly priding himself on enhancing safety cultures within small and medium-sized companies. This is a great presentation we're excited to see. Please welcome Iqbal up to the front.
My pleasure. Perfect. Appreciate it. Morning, folks. Morning. It'd be more meaningful if I didn't write that for myself. So I appreciate it, but it's great. So you know what? Let's jump right into it. So we talked about some of these things, my background, all that. But what I wanted to focus on here is that last point, first generation Canadian. So not something that I typically put on presentations, but I thought for the topic that we're talking about here, it's relevant. Like I mentioned, I was born in Winnipeg, but my dad came over in 1972 from India, and growing up, I would hear stories from him about some of the challenges that he had integrating into the workforce. My dad worked in foundries. He worked in other various blue collar jobs. And, you know, I would hear the challenges that he went through. I mean, safety in the 70s wasn't really on the forefront of things, but it was just things like understanding how to do the work, understanding the language, getting the cultural norms of what was acceptable at work, what wasn't. So those are things that, you know, I grew up hearing. Now, one of my roles as well is I'm an independent auditor for Construction Safety Association of Manitoba. And in that job, you know, I get to work with a lot of different companies. I get to go out to their sites, visit them, see how things are going. And what I'm recognizing is that there is a massive multicultural workforce in Winnipeg, right? And this is a good thing, right? And we'll talk about some of those needs that they fill. But with that, there are some safety challenges that come as well, right? I'm recognizing that there's some language barriers, some barriers to getting that safety knowledge for some folks. So when I talk about this as a subject that's near and dear, you know, I've seen it from both angles, from folks that have gone through it and also from seeing folks that are still going through it. Now, the intent of this presentation is not to just talk about what the challenges are, right? There's challenges with everything that we do. The intent is really talk about some of those strategies that we can employ to try and mitigate some of those risks and some of those challenges for those newcomer employees and really welcome into the fold of health and safety. Now, in talking about this subject, you know, I spent about 20 hours of research trying to figure out what can I talk about. And unfortunately, there's not a ton of information right now on, you know, who's doing what and what's really working. It is gaining more traction. There's places like WorkSafe New Zealand that put a great study together that talks about the various strategies that have worked in Canada, the US, UK, Australia, et cetera. So there is more and more research that's coming toward it. But what this is basically just kind of looking at some of those things that have been out there and then talking through some of those things that we're starting to see and really just using it as an opportunity to start thinking through, are we doing enough? So starting point is what's driving this conversation. So in Canada, we have a aging population and workforce. So our median age increased from about 26 years old in 1970 to 41 years old in 2020. So we're actually having more people leaving the workforce than we are having them join the workforce, and that includes in sectors like manufacturing. It was a CME survey that had found that more than 80% of businesses reported in manufacturing had reported labor and skills shortages. So once again, we're seeing that impact, right? We're seeing that impact in your industry and construction. We see that as well. Canada's recovering from COVID-19, right? We're starting to see growth. We're starting to see pushes for more industry, higher demand for infrastructure, for more projects, manufacturing projects. And with that, you know, we need folks that are going to help fill the labor, or sorry, help with labor on those. So in the manufacturing industry, they're expecting that they'll need 140,000 additional employees by 2030 to fill those needs. And when it comes to our population, right now we're actually at about 2.1, or sorry, we went from an average of 2.1 children per family to the lowest on record, which is about 1.47 children per family. So what this means is the natural increase of the population, so births minus deaths, are not enough to sustain the population growth, right? So there are some things there that are really driving this need for having newcomers join the workforce. And there's also some, you know, the government is obviously impacting this as well. So there's a couple programs that they have in place. One of them being the Federal Skills Trades Program, where foreign trade workers are with specific experience are eligible for jobs here. You have the Provincial Nominee Program, where a province has specific avenues or specific wants that they have of industries. They'll help folks get here as well. And then you'll have the Temporary Worker Program, which allows Canadians to hire foreign workers to fill temporary labor and skill shortages. So there's a need for it from a you know, economic, aging perspective, and then there's also some pushes from the government. Now, what I want to clarify is that, you know, there's a lot of talk and stuff like that from the political side of things on immigration and you know, how that immigration policy is being pushed out. That's not what I'm here to talk about, right? I don't really care about that in the sense of what we're talking about today. What we're talking about today is that there is a high population of newcomers in the workforce. And we really want to focusing on what are some of the challenges that they're having integrating into the safety side of things, and what are some strategies that we can help them out with, right? So it's not to minimize anyone's views or anything like that, but really the focus that we're talking about here is helping them overcome some of those safety challenges. So there's not a ton of Canadian studies on this, but the ones that I did find were fairly alarming. So the University of Calgary found that new immigrants are twice as likely to be injured compared to Canadian-born workers. So, and 90% of those injuries required medical treatment. The Robert Sauvé Research Institute found that up to 80% of work-related injuries requiring rehabilitation involves immigrants. CBC reported that the number of injuries amongst temporary foreign workers have doubled in the past 2 years. So 154 in 2019 and 362 in 2022. And the Institute for Work and Health in Toronto found that recent immigrants are twice as likely to be exposed to hazards without adequate protections. So when we talk about these are fairly startling statistics, right? And like I said, there's not too much statistics on this yet, so not too much more to pull from. But if you look at this, there's another group that has very similar statistics to this, that shares very similar risks. So young workers. We've recognized that right across every industry, we've recognized that young workers are at a higher risk to injuries and incidents in the workplace. That research has been out there for quite some time. That's been proven. You know, a lot of companies will have programs, new mentorship programs, green hat programs, things like that. Because we've recognized that new workers are at a higher risk to injuries due to lack of experience, you know, not having any background in that workforce, just various factors. And what we're recognizing is those factors apply to newcomer workers as well, with some additional things that may be exacerbating that as well, such as, you know, having to make sure that they can provide for their family, making sure that, you know, they're not speaking up because they're concerned that there might be retribution for that, right? So you have similar risks in both groups. So these numbers, when you look at them and say, oh, that's fairly high numbers, you can just compare it to the new workers and say that there's probably some crossover with that group. Now, you know, just to not to focus too much on this, but there are potential areas of liability if you don't put enough thought into mitigating some of those risks for newcomer workers. When we talk about civil, there's not too much that's really going to fall within what we're going to talk about. This is more contractual stuff, failing to honor the terms of the employment agreement. You know, you may be engaging third parties, so things like mediators to help you with your hiring practices. That's where the civil is really going to be more common. And just a quick tip there, if you are hiring third-party mediators, you want to make sure that you have a strong contract. And your contract, you really want to make sure that it's regulated in Canada. Just as something that you know, if there are any challenges there from the civil end of things, you'd really want to deal with that from a Canadian court perspective, as opposed to possibly the country where the mediators are helping from. Now, when we talk about regulatory and criminal, more often than not, if there are any issues with you know, liability from a newcomer worker perspective, regulatory is where it's going to fall within, right? You know, have you done everything to make sure that we provided those individuals with the information that they need, the training that they need to be able to work safely? Criminal does happen every once in a while, right? More so in general, there was a case fairly recently of a supervisor from, I believe it was New Brunswick. And what they had said was the supervisor had wanton recklessness for those that they were supervising. So very high level, you know, sent a worker into a confined space. They were doing leak testing in that confined space. There was no hazard assessment. There was no permit. They were doing testing while there was an individual there. They didn't follow what the plug that they were using the leak testing for had said. They didn't inform the worker that there was a leak test. That all resulted in criminal charges for that individual. So a wanton recklessness for the individual, right? So, you know, regulatory means something bad happened. Criminal means that you've done something really, really bad, right? 9 times out of 10, it's going to fall within those regulatory issues. And anything from a due diligence perspective is going to be able to help you out with regulatory and on the criminal side more often than not. Now, when we talk about regulatory OHS liabilities, for the employers, we have the general duty clause. We talk about, you know, ensures so far as is reasonably practicable the safety, health, and welfare of at work of all their workers. So what does this mean? What does reasonably practicable mean? Well, it differs, right? It depends on the size of your company. It depends on the budget of your company. It depends on how many resources you have available to mitigate these types of risks. It's all going to be individual based on the specifics of your company. But it does say that you need to do something. Doing nothing isn't enough, right? So we want to make sure that we're looking at what is reasonably practicable for the size of company we have, for the risks that we have, the critical tasks, the number of employees that may be impacted by this. These are all things that you really want to take into consideration. When we talk about it from the supervisor side of things, once again, taking all reasonably practicable precautions necessary to protect the safety and health of a worker under their supervision. So what are you doing as a supervisor to make sure that the folks that are working for you, they're trained on those hazards, that they understand those hazards, they understand how to mitigate them, They know what the safe work practices and procedures are that are applicable to that. When hazards change, that's being communicated. So those are all things that supervisors really want to be mindful of when working with a newcomer workforce and making sure that have we done enough to make sure that we're setting them up for success. And this one doesn't apply so much. It's more on the construction side, but there may be times that you take on a project in your plant where you act as the prime contractor. There, you just want to make sure you have systems in place to mitigate those hazards. So are you putting it in your contract that there needs to be a vulnerable worker program? Things like that are ways that, as a prime, as somebody overseeing multiple trades, that you might want to take into consideration. Now, a big focus on the research that I'd found when looking for this was it was a research paper called Safety Cultures Across Cultures. And basically, the authors argued that beliefs and values related to safety within a company are shaped by the national culture where the workers come from. So basically, the way that people in a country generally think about safety can influence how a company sees and manages safety. So, we've seen that, right? We've seen that folks, they'll bring parts of their culture with them. And that, according to this research, applies to how they look at safety as well. So, there was a fair amount of participants in this, thousands of individuals that they used to come up with these. And what they looked at is a bunch of factors, but the ones that we'll focus on today is uncertainty avoidance, power distance, collectivism, and assertiveness. So I'll talk about what each of these are. But I want to start with, there's variations within cultures, there's variations within peoples within cultures. So within countries and things like that as well. So these are generalizations. They may not apply to every single person, but it's just another tool in the toolkit to recognize that there may be some cultural aspects that you want to think about when addressing safety challenges or trying to help folks overcome some of those safety challenges. So the first one that we talk about is uncertainty avoidance. This is groups that rely on norms, rules, and procedures. So you have low uncertainty avoidance and you have high uncertainty avoidance groups. And on the low side, these are more flexible and open to new situations, comfortable with ambiguity, and they rely on skills and common sense. So how do we, what strategies can we use for low uncertainty avoidance cultures? You want to look at things like more open communication with folks, right? You want to have, I know in safety, formalization is a big thing, but maybe there's some opportunities for more informal conversations with folks, as opposed to maybe rolling something out to everyone. You have some more one-on-one conversations, more informal conversations. Now, I'm just going to say some countries that typically fall within these groups. But once again, as I mentioned, there's variances there. So Philippines, India, they're seen as low uncertainty avoidance cultures. Now, high uncertainty avoidance cultures, they prefer clear rules, routines, and established processes. They may be hesitant to embrace change. What they like is really clear procedures and processes. They want structured and formalized methods of doing things, right? So you really want to make sure that maybe, if you don't have as formalized as a program, if you're relying on some more of that, transmittal through discussions, that maybe this is a group that you really want to make sure you got your stuff tight there. So countries that will typically fall within this, Japan, Germany, they would fall more on the high uncertainty avoidance culture side of things. Power distance, so hierarchy and authority. So this reflects the range in which workers expect boundaries between leaders, supervisors, and subordinates. So in low power distance cultures or in groups, there's no large gap between managers, supervisors, and workers. They appreciate open communication. They appreciate being involved in decision making. Canada is a great example of that, right? In most of the jobs that I've had, there's not a huge gap between if I can go speak to my supervisor, to my manager, and vice versa. My workers had the ability to speak to me or to my manager. That was fairly open communication. They like being involved in decisions. That really worked with the groups that I've worked in thus far in Canada. Now, on the flip side, you also have high power distance. So there's a significant acceptance of authority. They're not accustomed to having input on decisions, and they actually expect leaders to make those decisions for them. So, the strategies here is you may want to communicate, the communication about safety comes from authoritative figures, right? They place a little bit more authority on folks in higher positions. There may be an opportunity there that communication comes from them. Now, I'm going to give you an anecdotal example here of how I've used specifically this one. And India is a country where, there is a high power distance. It's when you have workers, the supervisor, the manager, they're kind of seen as up here. They're seen as harder to approach, and kind of what they say goes. And when I was working with one of my clients on the construction side of things, I had been working with a group of Indian fellas, and my goal was to get them to buy into the safety rules that we had on site. So I used all the typical ways that I do it, which is educate and mentor. Teach them the way to do it right, follow up with them, put some accountabilities in place, just make sure that we go through those motions, that they know what to do. We're teaching them what they need to do so that they can do it on their own. I didn't have much success with that. So I took it back to my dad and I said, hey, Dad, like, I'm not getting anywhere. And he said, well, what did you do? I said this, I educated them, I mentored them. And he said, you're an idiot. Right? And I said, fine, fair enough. Enlighten me. So he said they don't respond to that. He said, and once again, my dad was born in India, so I don't think I get canceled for this because I think it comes right from the heart. And he said, a lot of Indian folks won't that won't resonate with them. You need to be in more of an authoritative figure, and you need to tell them what they need to do as opposed to asking them to do it. He said, try that. So the next time I went with the owner, I took the owner with me. We went to the same group and we said, this is the expectation. We're telling you to do this. This is the requirement. The owner was there. He repeated those things, and we had success with that one group. Now, I'm not advocating that everyone goes out and starts yelling at Indians, right? That's not what I'm advocating for here, right? I'm just telling you that there's different ways to deal with groups. I used a different tool in that tool chest to try and get across to a group that I wasn't having any luck with the typical methods that I use for that, right? So like I said, I don't want you to generalize with these examples. It's just an example that anecdotally ended up working for me. Collectivism. Collectivism reflects how people view the sharing of resources and the sense of togetherness within groups or organizations. So low collectivism is focused more on individual achievements, motivated by personal rewards, and there's autonomous work structures. Some of the strategies that you may want to employ here is emphasize individual performance, incentivize individual performance, recognize those folks that are achieving really well on the safety side of things. Our neighbors to the south, Americans, right? They're big on individual rights and freedoms, right? They're big on individual recognition. So that's a culture that sometimes falls within that low collectivism. On the other side, you have cultures that fall within high collectivism. So this is an emphasis on teamwork. This is an emphasis on group-oriented incentives, and mentoring programs are effective. So here, group awards, right? Recognizing a whole group, bringing them all up. Aligning safety goals with the collective well-being of that group, right? So really building that collectivism into how you're pushing out safety. And some of the groups that fall within this are, you'll have Nigeria, Japan, Philippines. Those are all groups that you'll typically see high collectivism in there. Assertiveness. So it's about how people in a culture express themselves in social relationships, whether they're bold, confrontational, or more reserved. Low assertiveness, they may want to avoid confrontation. They value cooperation, trusting of colleagues, more open to behavior monitoring. And you may need to, as leaders, for a strategy perspective, you may want to take a less confrontational approach. I know I've had tons of examples where with cultures where it's low assertiveness, taking that confrontational approach, you may get the yes, and I'll do it, but it's actually just because they want to avoid that situation where you're being confrontational with them. Some of the some of the cultures that fall within this, what I saw when I was looking online, they say Canada could fall within there. There's a lot of politeness there, but we know that varies, right? There's a lot of assertiveness, there's low. So I use these as generalizations. India, that may fall within that low assertiveness culture as well. High assertiveness, on the other side, is competitive with each other, less inclined to cooperate, less inclined to cooperative safety efforts, and they're more comfortable expressing their experiences. Here, you want to make leaders can be more direct. You may want to allow individuals to voice their safety concerns, bring up what they want to talk about, and maybe there's some opportunities there to have some competitive aspects of safety. So putting some incentives in place that have a little bit of a competitive nature to them. Now, high assertiveness, the U.S. Is another example of a culture that has that. I can tell you from my past experience, when we had expanded into the States, I worked with power linemen. It's a trade. You're working in remote conditions and things like that. So a fairly rough and gruff group sometimes. And what we were doing was we were actually bringing Canadian standards out to the States. And Canadian standards, when it comes to power line, are higher than what the American standards have. In other areas, American standards are higher. But what we had in that situation was that because we were just rolling those out without much of that, letting folks know, letting them voice their concerns, when we actually started rolling those things out, in our first session, there was 20 people there, 10 of them got up and walked out, said, this is BS. You can't tell us what to do. Don't bring your standards here, things like that, right? So we really had to look at what was the approach that we were taking, and we need to change it up because this isn't getting what we were looking for here, right? So when I talk about these things, it's not to put generalizations in place that these are going to work for everyone. It's just a recognition that there are different cultures, there are subsects within your workplace. There are ways that'll work better with some folks that won't work with others. So it's just taken into consideration that maybe there are some cultural impacts here that we want to take into consideration. Maybe there are some ways that we want to roll out strategies based on an understanding of your own culture and your own subcultures within your organization, right? So, once again, you got to tailor your strategies to your specific workforce. So all these things aren't going to work. They're not going to be applicable, but maybe it's just another tool to say, if we're not getting through using these methods, maybe we've got to take a little bit deeper dive into the specifics of the group that we're working with. Now, jumping over to actually some of those safety challenges in welcoming newcomer workers. So credentialing issues is a massive issue, right? You'll have a lot of folks that the country that they're from, the education that they have in that country, the work that they used to do, because of those, the processes in place to bring that over to Canada, they're not able to walk into that same field, right? Anecdotally, I was mentioning that, I'll talk to when I'm, some of my Uber drivers and things like that. When I ask them, what did you do in, back home? What they'll tell me will blow my mind, right? Engineering, et cetera. Just careers that don't align with the work that they're doing right now. So a lot of that brings with it mismatched physical demands, lack of awareness of job-related hazards, and lack of familiarity with those job tasks. Communication is usually the biggest challenge that folks will highlight when asked, what are your biggest challenges from a safety perspective with newcomers? So, not being able to communicate what those hazards are, how to do that job, understanding and applying that safety information is a challenge for the newcomer sometimes. There might be different communication styles. I talk really fast, right? So for a lot of newcomers, I talk too fast. So I need to, I know Marcella had that challenge with me, is I need to slow it down, right? So those are things, and even lack of understanding of rights and WCB, all of those things, those are some of those challenges that newcomers may face. Religious considerations for PPE. So this is a big one, right? You have a lot of folks that, due to religious requirements, there's going to be some challenges with the PPE they can and can't wear, right? So recognizing that there may be some of these challenges and then addressing it on that onboarding, and we'll talk about some of those strategies, addressing it up front. That's really where you want to have these conversations, but it is something that we need to be mindful of with newcomer workforces. Resource constraints. So the companies that may be hiring, there may be constrained resources there. You may not have a big department that's able to spend all their time, translating all your procedures and policies and things like that. There may be inadequate provisions for language support. Maybe you don't have other folks in the company that speak that same language. And you know what? You may actually forego specific requirements due to labor shortages. We need to get the work done, right? So, and that's okay, right? But it's just recognizing, what do we need to do? Internal challenges. Maybe you don't have your own standardized procedures and policies in place yet. Maybe there's a poor culture already within that company, right? That's not really going to be that's going to be impacted, or that's going to impact on the newcomer workers as well. And then fear of reprisal is a big one too. Is am I gonna lose my job if I bring up safety concerns? Am I going to lose my job if I bring up incidents? Right. So these are some of the challenges that newcomers, whether it's directly from their end of things or from the employer end of things, just some things we got to be mindful of. Now, I didn't bring those things up to scare anyone away from not hiring newcomers. That's not the intent here, right? Just like with everything, it's just a recognition that these are some of the challenges that newcomer workforces may have. But what are the things that we can put in place to help mitigate those challenges? So I'll go over a couple here, and some of them may be applicable, some of them may not be applicable, but it starts at the hiring process. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to start with putting a plan in place, which addresses questions such as, what positions are you hiring for? What are the critical tasks associated with the positions you're hiring for? Because when we start thinking of what do we need to put in place, critical tasks is a really good place to start, right? What are we gonna, have we translated those materials that are gonna be applicable to that position and those critical tasks? And what are the expectations for capabilities? What's the experience we're looking for? Are there any physical capabilities, any language comprehension that you expect for that position? Higher critical task, do you expect more? Lower critical task, do you expect less? These are all things that you can start to make a profile for newcomer workers, or just workers in general. But you start to make a profile of what that position is actually going to look like, so that you can start to, start to put some plans in place for how we're going to address those things or how we're going to hire. Third-party recruitment is a big one for larger organizations. So, if you are engaging someone to help with your third-party recruitment, you want to review their screening process. What are the types of questions they're asking? Does it align with, the expectations of that position that you've put together? There are certain companies now that are starting to integrate some of your safety requirements into that onboarding process that the third party does. So asking them to assist with translating some materials, asking them to, see if they can do any specific safety training before deployment. And this is more to your own internal processes. Obviously, different country when it comes to things like fall protection, that's not going to apply. But maybe you get them to translate some of your, procedures. And see if there's an opportunity to establish communication plan for ongoing safety updates. So you're paying these companies a fair amount of money. Is there something they can do more for you? Can they continuously, when you have something that happens, safety bulletin or something like that, can they do something with that and send it back out to the employees that they're helping out? In-house hiring, you want to make sure that where possible, ask questions that that require an explanation, right? Get them to so that you get a comprehension of kind of where that language skill is, where that that ability to understand and apply what you're asking is. If you're comfortable with it, and you should be, ask what language the individual speaks. You may have workers at your workplace that can help with, bringing that person on, mentoring them, translating some of your materials, or at the very least, you can help gauge what your, what those language profiles are at your workplace. So, Aaron, I know we talked before that. I think it was you guys had like 14 or something like that in your workplace, right? So it starts to build once again. Okay, what are the languages that they speak? What do we need to have assistance with? And you're starting to build that plan, because there's really no one size shoe that's going to fit for all of these, for all the challenges that are going to come with hiring a new workforce. When it comes to onboarding, like I said, you may hire subcontractors. So, do you have provisions in your subcontractor contracts that speak to having some sort of vulnerable worker program, right? Because you don't want to just, as hiring those individuals, they may bring on newcomers with some of those safety challenges that we talked about. So as the person that's employing them, are you protecting your company by saying, you need to have some controls in place and send those controls to us so we can verify them? Create an updated orientation for newcomers. There are so many great AI tools now that will take your existing material and turn it into simplified English, right? So, I was playing around with ChatGPT yesterday just to see hazard assessment. What's an easier way of saying hazard? That's to say, when I came into safety and I had worked construction prior to, I didn't know what a hazard assessment was. I worked for poor companies that didn't tell me what that was, but I didn't know what that was. So when you're asking or you're telling somebody that never heard that term before, can you simplify the English there, right? So things like hazard assessment, it told me safety check, right? So you're doing a safety check. I think it still conveys what we're trying to get at there, but it makes it a little bit easier to digest. And then you start, combining that with hazard assessment and things like that. But simplify those or create an updated orientation, which is simplified, and use these tools that are out there that are free to really do the heavy lifting for you. Video or audio delivery is great because there may be reading challenges, right? So you may have individuals that may not be able to read even in their own language. So if you can do it in video or you can do it via audio, you can use this time and time again. And for that language profile that you're starting to build, you can continuously just keep rolling this out as you get a worker from that group, from that culture. And utilize internal resources if possible. If you have folks that do that, get them to help out, right? And then on the onboarding, be clear about PPE requirements. So if your job requires that you need to have certain PPE, hard hats and things like that, I'm a Sikh, I have a turban, and I work construction, and I wear a hard hat, right? So that's something that we, I recognize that that's a requirement within Manitoba. So I just adjusted my style of turban to be able to accommodate that, right? So these are conversations that should be should be had up front. I know folks kind of shy away from them and, you know, maybe get nervous about, but this is a bona fide requirement for job sites, right? So, yep. Yep.
If we're gonna assign you a task where like maybe 90% of the time you can wear your turban,
Yep.
but you're an electrician, you're gonna be working up high, and our requirement when you're in the lift is that you have to wear a hard hat, then that day we're gonna need you to wear a skull cap
Yep.
style instead. And so I'm okay having these
Yep.
conversations. Well, but is there best practices in how to have those conversations? People that you could suggest, maybe?
Yeah, I would say like, you know, the more options you can provide them on how they can accommodate that, the better. So mentioning like the skull cap, that's great. Another one that's like for, you know, I'm giving the insights of a turban here. It's material, right? In terms of like the amount of material, that's how big the turban is. So what my coaching typically is that for those tasks that require you to wear a hard hat, put a turban that has less material, right? So you're not, you know, someone will say, well, it gets away from the identity, things like that. So everyone will have their own takes on it. But what I found the most success with is if you can just tell them you're still good to wear a turban, right? You can, but if you just wear a little bit less material at those times, you know, you wrap your turban a little bit differently at those times that you need to wear a hard hat. That's how we're going to be able to accommodate, let you do the work that you need to do, make sure that you're staying safe, and kind of just give them some of those options that don't necessarily tell them that, you know, you can or can't based on. Yep.
Is there a different terminology what you call that?
Yeah, it would be called a parna, like P-A-R-N-A. Yeah, try that language. Maybe you'll throw them off. Well, what?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Conversations with them.
Yep.
Entanglement has.
Fair enough. Yep.
The gentleman that I've had a conversation with doesn't wear a turban, doesn't have a beard,
Yep.
but has a car.
Yep.
The other gentleman wears a turban, has a beard. So I was saying, well, I know
Yep.
that you're wearing the kara as a religious meaning.
Yep.
But it's not religiously required because you cut your hair, you don't wear a turban, you don't shave.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, she's like schooling you.
Yeah. You got him. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get other people comfortable to have those conversations. The supervisor's comfortable with having the conversation, the
Yep.
team comfortable with having those conversations. But I just find it's a little bit of a barrier because they say, well, I'm wearing it because of religious.
Yep.
reasons. But
Yeah, no, I think what you're doing is bang on in terms of like the more that you can speak the same language in terms of, you know, what are those called, you know, what is the requirements around them, and then what are some strategies, you know, can you take it off and put it in your pocket, right? If you don't want it off of yourself, can you just put it away for the time that you're working on there, right? You know, these are the tasks that are gonna require hard hats. Let's come up with a strategy beforehand, right? So that's why I say I think it's so important to do it at the onboarding time, because then it gets that conversation out of the way. It can really become part of that checklist as you're bringing somebody on, that conversation is being held there, that you're getting that, you know, confirmation that there is a strategy there. And then if you start tossing in some of the language as well, in terms of, you know, referencing it right, it gives them some of that thought as well that, okay, well, this company is, you know, they recognize, they understand, and they're giving me an option that, once again, doesn't go against, you know, culture, religion, and things like that. So I think you're doing a fantastic job. Yeah. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Cool. So when it comes to, and you know, when it comes to anything, any type of plan, you got to create a tailored plan that's going to work for your company, right? So all these things that we're talking about, some of them may be applicable, some of them may not be, but you want to look at, you know, what are your operational needs? You want to assess the risks, you know, what are those critical areas? You want to leverage internal, external resources. You want to put tracking in there, measurement in there. And some sort of continuous improvement cycle as well, right? So just like anything that you're going to roll out, there needs to be a plan, and you need to make sure that that plan is specific to your organization. When it comes to on the job, so from the studies that I saw, the most effective program for helping newcomers overcome some of those challenges on the safety side is if you can have a newcomer mentorship program. Those seem to work the best. If you have somebody from the same culture, speaks the same language, the success rate is really high. As long as you give somebody, you're putting somebody with a newcomer, even if it's not from the same language, the same culture, but you're picking the right person, right? You're picking somebody that has patience, that's gonna, take the time to explain those things, not get frustrated. That's gonna help. It's gonna help kind of usher that person into what the safety requirements there are as well. Formalize the program, right? So get credit for the programs that you have in place from a due diligence perspective. You want to show the steps that your company's taking. You want to be able to prove that we tried to do more than just nothing. Internal resources, are there folks that can help you out there? Can you train them up? Can you give them more education? Can you incentivize them that will send you to training? Put them part of that committee, really make them champions for that group of folks that they're going to be assisting, right? So are there any opportunities there to really lean on some of those folks? And in the process, get them trained up, give them some incentives, make them part of that safety team and part of that safety delivery. Training providers, so you're starting to see bilingual training happening within the industry. So I partnered up with S2SA, the Sales to Safety Association, and we'd actually done a course in Punjabi, which was the the Health and Safety Committee Basics course. So basically, they opened it up to anyone, any member who wanted. So even outside of S2SA, I think they're going to do another one in the fall. But they recognized it was an important topic that not a lot of folks had an understanding of in a specific language. All these folks that attended, they were able to speak English. They just speak Punjabi better, right? So we were able to speak to them, really get those concepts figured out, have open communication, get feedback, get them to actually participate in conversations. It's really meaningful when you're able to impart safety in a language that makes sense to those folks, right? And Marcelo was giving me a great point that, English is my first language. I can speak Punjabi, but it's hybrid at best. And I recognized how it felt to try and, I know the concepts, I know safety inside and out, but I couldn't speak to those concepts because my language skills were a barrier to that, right? So really puts you on the other side to see, oh, okay, I get it, right? So just things that, if there are any training providers, once again, if you have internal resources that have an interest in safety, that want to, potentially take that role on, send them to a train the trainer, right? Give them the opportunity to train those courses, train them in-house. Translate job-specific materials. So I keep focusing on the critical tasks, right? Because some companies have hundreds of procedures. Where do you start? Start with the critical tasks. Start with those tasks that those individuals will be performing. Kind of, put a plan in place, and then you can keep moving on as you see some need in different areas. And like I said, now there's so many great technologies out there. Google Translate, ChatGPT, all of these AIs that are coming out. They're doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you, right? Within a couple of years, it's actually going to be at a point that, there will be devices that you could just translate in real time. It's actually not too far away. Pictorial procedures have always been one that's been helpful. Show them how to do it with pictures. It just kind of gets rid of that need to, understand the written language. Learning management systems. So learning management systems is just getting an online system for all of your training. A lot of them are building in different languages now. So if you purchase a learning management system, it might be something you want to ask is, does it allow me to put different languages in there? And if so, then you can start putting those into the courses as well, and then providing those courses to different languages. I know Spanish is a big one in the States, French, and I think we're getting more and more that we'll see here in the near future. Folks are using VR. There's a company in Winnipeg that works with Ukrainian immigrants to show them VR, to show them what a work site looks like, and then show them what the hazard is and associate the word with that hazard in English. So it's trying to get them more comfortable with it as opposed to just reading it or seeing it on a procedure. They're wanting to take different methods of trying to show these folks that this is what it looks like. You can see it, you can almost feel it, and this is what we call it, right? So there's some studies right now coming out that the learning that the retention that folks are getting from VR type of training is much higher than what you'll get from typical methods of training. So as you integrate these solutions, I think we're still a little bit out. It's not too common yet, but it will be, right? So think to what kind of we need to do in the future as well. English proficiency training, there may be some opportunities to provide some of these options at your work. Once again, we're talking about reasonably practicable. Is this practicable for your workplace? Maybe some larger organizations, maybe there's an opportunity there. And a big one is preparing the existing workforce. Let folks know, right? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the ways that they can help? What are some of the things that they have in place? Who are these mentors that they can rely on? All those types of things, if you communicate it out to the workforce, you want them to be advocates, you want them to be partners in kind of this journey. Supervisors are going to play a critical role, right? So making sure that they're monitoring and providing feedback, they're integrating them into the safety culture. So, they don't understand, so I'm not going to bring them into the safety meeting. You still want to integrate them in, You want to find methods of, you know, what's the right resource? Do you have somebody who can afterwards, you know, explain what was happening there? Supervisors to keep in mind, you know, cultural sensitivity, just being mindful of maybe that abrupt approach, maybe that's not working with this individual. Patience is a huge one. And then having flexibility in your approach, knowing that you may need to pivot, you may need to look at things outside of what you've been kind of doing thus far and what's worked for you until now. My last slide, call to action. So I say, you know, I want us to reflect on the current and upcoming labor challenges that newcomers are helping our society combat. And these are folks that are leaving their country, you know, everything that they know to start new lives in foreign lands. We're due to a host of factors. They're potentially at a higher risk of incidents and injuries. And, you know, although we've recognized some of the safety challenges that come with that, a theme that permeated throughout this presentation is that with additional planning, we can overcome these challenges and make sure that everyone has the same safety standards, the same workplace standards as the rest of us do. So my ask is that for each of you, the next time that you come across a new worker, a newcomer worker, whether internal, et cetera, that you reflect on, does that individual have the appropriate health and safety knowledge to keep themselves safe? That's all I got. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Statement in regards to using the videos and that for training. We had recently encountered a bit of a pitfall. Gentleman. He seemed to have enough working language as English, but we started assuming he understood more than he did. When it comes to our online training, everything that is written is translated on the phone into their own language, but they can't do that with video. You might think that they are understanding and comprehending, but they're not always. So it's got to be very cautious about it.
That's a great point, right? You start to get picking up some words and things like that. You take it and kind of run with it. That doesn't apply to everything. So doing some pulse checks every once in a while, gauging that when, you know, there's probably some sort of trigger there that you guys must have seen that said, oh, there's.
He didn't know that he should go. He didn't know here we thought, understanding, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. And doing those, you know, those continuous checks that when you apply some of those new processes or some of those new techniques to try and, you know, do those pulse checks, did that work? Did that translate as appropriately? I think that's important to like that kind of continuous monitoring of the program. And that's where I say is, you know, even if there's a training program and, you know, you want it to be engaging, you want it to have, you know, all the pictures and things that you get on something like an online training. But if it's a matter of just getting somebody verbally to do that training in the language and just recording somebody sitting there, is that better than nothing? It may be, right? So there might be some things that it may not be as flashy, but it's going to get the point across. Is it going to be able to be reused over and over again and send the right message? That might be an opportunity there as well. So great point. I appreciate you adding that. Any other questions, folks?
Question I have from Nathan, just thank you so much.
Reason gave me a lot because I'm working with newcomers. My name is Helena. I'm from Manitoba staff. Maybe some of you heard about Manitoba staff. We're working with lots of employers and we're connecting employers with newcomers, and we're providing lots of training on accountability and so Canadian workplace culture, not only for clients and for employers as well. If you guys are interested to learn more, please come to see me. And thank you very much for info. I would like to talk to you more after this. Yeah, thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm just waiting to see if they're actually going to let it go. We've got a couple of services that are available to the group here and the folks online that can help you support the new hire orientations with newcomers as well as existing folks. What we have been finding is that, and it's not the same as our regular training, the instructor-led training with testing, but we have a number of our training presentations recorded and hidden on our YouTube channel. YouTube's AI does a great job of translate, not a perfect job, but much better than what I'm doing. And every language that we've tested it in, the person who is the recipient of the awareness training video says, yeah, that was good. It wasn't perfect, but I knew what they were getting at. So we have a ton of videos that are available. You can't see them until we give you the link to them. But if you have courses or content that you're interested in having access to a video, that you can then click the closed captioning button on YouTube to allow you to translate it into, I think it was 114 different languages that's available on there through no effort of your own other than clicking and having your people sit down. Reach out to us, info@madesafe.ca, and we will get you the links you need. And if we don't have the videos available right now, we can make those recordings in the future next time we deliver that training. So I have been given the thumbs up from outside the room, which means that lunch is ready. Thank you so much. Zoom folks, we're a little bit ahead of schedule, but not by much. So we will restart again at 12:45. But from now until then, it's lunchtime. Thank you so much for the folks in the room. If we could get you to exit through the door at the back and come on around to the buffet style serving there. Lunch is served. We'll see you shortly. Reggie's going to point at us. Perfect. All right, folks, welcome back. We're in the home stretch. And big thanks to Crave, who filled everyone with pulled pork sandwiches. And now we're all slowed down and ready to sit and listen. Maybe nap, maybe not. No one's judging here for the rest of the afternoon. So before we get started with the working alone session, did everyone get a ticket for the draw later on? No? Okay. Joe, we've got a couple folks here. If you didn't get a ticket for the draw, raise your hand. Joe's going to come around and give you a ticket. For the folks online, what's going to happen is we are going to do a draw based on the names that go in for the surveys. So if you're in Zoom land right now, you fill out the survey, there's a spot, it asks for your name, you fill out your name, we're going to pick one of those names and you'll win the prize. And CME just got a bunch of new swag in, so I think the prizes are pretty neat. Okay. Without further ado, we're into practical problem solving working alone. I worked in manufacturing as a safety professional for 11 years and another 6 years in training roles. And working alone is one of those challenges where there's just never enough time to actually take good action on it. And I can see Alex smiling because he's inherited a couple programs from me that he's had to work on solving that problem. Because if you've got 20 problems with immediate risk that you can work on, and one that maybe the risk isn't immediate, it isn't present, it's a what if kind of question, you can't get to it. And it's okay until it's not. And that moment that it becomes not okay, it's a serious problem. Someone is injured, you're not able to get them the help they need, and you haven't done your due diligence. So, my name is Nathan Rasmussen. I'm the program manager here at Made Safe, and we're presenting with Randy Pokrant today. I'm going to let Randy do his bio. I believe on one of these first couple of slides. You know what? I'm just going to hand Randy the clicker and let him take it away.
Let's go. Oh, which way am I holding this thing, Nathan?
Other way.
Other way?
Yes, sir.
There we go. Welcome, everybody. Thank you. Yes, thank you to Nathan. Thank you to Made Safe. Glad you guys are all here to be with us today, talk about this important subject. My name is Randy Pokrant with Protelec. I thought I'd just quickly tell you a little bit about our company and a little bit about myself, my background, just so you guys know who who's up here with you guys and that sort of thing. So again, thanks for being here. Some of this will be maybe a repeat for some of you if you've been attended. This is actually we have a great partnership with the Made Safe group here for the last few years. Really appreciate the opportunity to be part of these forums and come out and really hear it's about educating and helping to inform people about sometimes these, there's a lot of parts of the regulations that we as safety professionals, actually, that was one of the questions I was going to get people to show of hands here in that, but I'll get to that in a second. But, there's a lot that goes into a comprehensive safety management system. This is one area that our company, is focused on and can kind of provide you guys some information regarding it. But so I'm glad to be out here doing that today. again, Protelec security and safety, we've been around, you know, you might have heard Protelec alarms over the years. We're a Manitoba family-owned company, been around since 1968. We've always had our traditional security division. We had a residential. We're now focused strictly on commercial security. We, you know, so that part of our business, about 20 years ago, we had one of our clients that came to us and they had a person who was working alone on a midnight shift, and they were coming to us with trying to figure out, well, how can we keep this person protected? And so our owner, being, you know, trying to support the client and being very innovative, he, you know, thought about this, and we originally tried to do it through the alarm panel, and we quickly realized that did not work great. So our team, we developed our service, our lone worker safety monitoring service called Checkmate. We developed it back in 2003. I just found out recently we were the second ones in Canada to develop this. So we've now, you know, supporting clients right across Canada and into the North America. But so that's how we got into that. We also own and operate our own ULC certified emergency monitoring center here in Manitoba. Been operating since our company first opened in 1968. And that really is the backbone to, you know, all of our, many of our services, including our Checkmate service. So if our, you know, part of the response processes might be where you're getting a live call from one of our operators, they're calling right from here in Manitoba. And we are very proud of our team there and the professionalism that they provide. So that's a little bit about Checkmate and where it came from and this concept. Again, here to educate. My background, actually, I worked for the company when I was in my school years in the late 1980s. I worked in our emergency monitoring center, but I went on to a completely different career in manufacturing construction too. So I kind of come a little bit from the same background as maybe some of you, or at least the industry that you're in now. And I've seen, you know, a lot of, you know what, I was just chatting with Anna and I'm sorry, named Rob, there you go. But, you know, just how, you know, over the years, how things have evolved, right? And how, you know, what the benefits of a company that can have a really strong safety management system, what benefits that can bring to the company. You know, we're always trying to retain people and all, and make sure people are, you know, think good about coming to work. So that's important. So I've seen those benefits. I've also seen the outcomes of, you know, organizations that haven't focused on safety and how tragic that can be in some really first-hand experiences there. So glad to be here with you today. We're going to be chatting about this. Quick show of hands here. I was going to ask you guys, first of all, how many organizations, just show of hands, if you're from the same organization, just one of you put up your hand, but how many separate organizations are here? If everybody wants to hold up their hand. So we have maybe 12 or something like that. Okay. And maybe I'll leave that at now. There'll be a few more times to raise your hands here shortly. So here's our learning objectives for today. So the first part here, we kind of broken up the working alone part into two separate areas. We're going to be looking at providing some examples, so it's kind of relatable to you guys in your organizations. Nathan has some, you know, that direct experience in his career. So I think that is really makes this important or makes it applicable to you guys. And the other part of it is we're going to look at the regulations. You know, there's this part of the regulations that sometimes gets a little bit overlooked. We have a lot on the go, but it is one that is very common. We'll actually find when we look at the definitions and that it is a hazard that really comes up a lot. And so it's important to know what those regulations and definitions are. So, and I think, remember, Iqbal was talking about how, you know, talk about some challenges. Well, we also want to talk about a little bit about solutions, and that's what you guys are looking for too. And you might have some solutions in place that are there. We're going to look at, you know, maybe some ways that we can help in that area as well. So final review and takeaways. And then hopefully there's a little bit of time right at the end. We're going to touch on our after hours call answer and health and safety incident reporting. More so on the health and safety incident reporting, we'll do a bit of it's something that we're starting to get more involved with now as well. So that might be helpful to you guys to learn a little bit about that. So,
and my job today is to serve as a warning to others. Randy's going to talk about some of the solutions, and I will talk about the challenges I've had and how desperately I needed some of these answers when I had those questions.
Yeah. And I talk fast too. So if I'm talking too fast, you guys will have to say, slow down a little bit. But and engagement, ask questions along the way. That's always important too. You know, there's no better way to hopefully we can manage the time and we'll move on. I've already used up most of it now, so. So why is protecting lone workers so important? We're going to get into that in a moment, but I'm going to start with a few stats here and things like that I found this slide to be quite helpful. Reports estimate that 1 in 5 people work alone, many working alone continuously or at certain times of their day. So about 20% of the workforce. I think this is actually maybe increasing. I think it's actually maybe a little bit on the low side. Who thinks, just show of hands, who thinks that's fairly accurate, 20% of the workforce? I don't know. It's hard to say, I guess, right? But seems reasonable.
How many of this group are working alone at some point during the month? How many of you are working alone or in isolation right now? Yeah. There should be many more hands up than there are. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah. One of the other, here's another thing I was going to ask you guys is how many people, this was one of the, I did a presentation not long ago, same topic, and I asked this question right at the beginning. First of all, I said, how many people are aware, first of all, in the group here, are aware that there's working alone? And if you're in health and safety, most likely you're aware, but are aware of that there's regulations, working alone regulations. Okay, so I mean, it looks like most people are aware. How many people would say you intimately know the regulations and what is needed, in depth? And there's a few. So and it's very similar to the last presentation I did where it was about that same group there. It was like, like everybody put their hands, I know about this, but do I know really what's all required and the hands went down a little bit. So that's, I think, something that is, that we can all learn here today, maybe some new concepts, new ideas. Studies show that it's increasing. Of course, I think that's obvious with what's happening with, you look at through the pandemic and how we're, the way we work is changing. I was talking about how technology nowadays, sometimes in a manufacturing facility, how, maybe technology now in a particular workstation, you have less people working in a certain area because you don't need as many people working in that area, and how now suddenly we might have people working, not so much working alone, but working in isolation. And there are risks associated with that as well. So,
and Scott, did we have, talking to Scott in Zoomland, did we have a number of people that are working at home today watching this stream put their hands up in the chat room? I'm hoping a few, because unless your boss is sitting on the couch while you're at the dining room table, you may have a working alone or in isolation situation when you're working at home.
We're seeing some hands come up right now.
Excellent. Well done, folks.
Yeah, and that is, working from home is one that's coming up all the time now. I work from home very commonly, and really it's the definition of what is a workplace and employers' responsibilities. And, if you're working, well, we can get into that too, but that is really that is a workplace, and therefore there's requirements there too. So, point 3, really that, our goal is, is always that there'll be no incidents. There's 0 incidents. That's always our goal, but incidents occur, world stats there, 6,300 people die, 317 million accidents. I think I just was looking up, it's a little bit out of date, I think, but I think we have 26,000 injuries occur every year in Canada, 85 deaths per month or something like that, over 1,000 deaths per. So, things happen. We want to drive that to 0, but things happen. So that's really the point there. And when things do happen, we want to ensure that we're getting people that timely assistance so that for the best chance of a positive outcome. And, that's, how do we do that? How do we ensure that people are getting that timely assistance? And we can do that by, ensuring that people are getting checked on regular safety checks. And, and only, studies also show that only a small percentage of people really, that if they're working under this hazard condition, we've got to be aware of it first of all and what it means, and then that they're adequately protected. And I don't know, does this one here sound like it's reasonable, that maybe we aren't necessarily, we may think we are protecting people, but are we really doing it in an adequate way? So we don't need to show hands, but something to think about. So again, more working alone examples. I'm going to bring up this one here as my first one here too. So something we added in recently. I'm out, my wife and I like hiking. This is a picture of us last summer, and I'm out hiking and thinking about this is that, boy, there couldn't be a more poignant example of the need you know, when you think back to this Aaron Ralston's situation, and that, you know, making sure, you know, people know where you're going, what you're doing, to have regular safety checks occurring on people, and those check-ins, you know, we need to know, another important part of that is location information. We need to know, you know, where people are, where they're headed, and, you know, again, so that we can ensure that that timely assistance is occurring. And what a, you know, I say poignant, that's not the right word, but it is such a tragic example of, you know, when people aren't getting those safety checks. So thought that might be a good one to share, and you can probably relate to some of these ideas as well when you think about, you know, your own life, and then whether it's your personal life, but also of course in your workplaces and stuff too, for some of the tasks and roles that people have. So you're going to take the
Yeah, you keep clicking.
the regulations.
Yeah,
I'll be the click man.
absolutely.
Okay.
So everyone in this room, you're here because you have some familiarity or at least responsibility for the Act and regulations. Today, we're going to look at two parts.
Oh, sorry.
We're going to look at the definitions in general matters, because to start with, what is working alone? What is working in isolation? How could I be working alone? There's 40 other people here with me. How could I be? I'm not working in isolation. That's clear. And then working alone and in isolation. So once we have the definitions, we'll talk about how it applies. Workplace, to start off very simply, means any building, site, workshop, structure, mine, mobile vehicle, like a car. Everyone got here in a vehicle. Did anyone walk? No one walked. Someone walked. Good for you, Marnie. Other premises or location where indoors or outdoors in which one or more workers or self-employed person are engaged. Legislation is exhausting. We have no one from workplace safety and health here today, so that's legislation is exhausting. What does this mean? If you're doing work at a place, that's a workplace. When I get in the car and drive to your site to pass you over the banner or the plaque because congratulations, you've gotten certified, that car is my workplace until I arrive at your site, and then your site is my workplace. Who knows I'm there? If I trip and fall, if I have a heart attack, if I am overcome with emotion at celebrating your safe work certification with you, it's coming. Who knows that I've needed medical attention? What is the first aid treatment for overexposure to pure awesomeness? Well, we've got to make sure that we're staying on top of that, and someone is aware that I needed help. And how is my employer, who's responsible for my safety, going to get me that help? We've defined workplace.
And that's, I think, what we try to do here is build on sort of the, you know, the layers, because, you know, it talks about the workplace later on in the regulation. You kind of, you know, and it's all like that in all parts of the other parts of the regulations, or you'd have to know the definitions first before you start reading the regulations. I'm sure you're all aware of that, but yeah, so that's a important part. And there you
So
go.
working alone means the performance of any work function, where the worker is the only worker for that employer at that workplace. When I'm working from home, sorry, I'm smacking the microphone here. When I'm working from home, I'm the only person from my employer at that workplace. Does that mean that they have to have a plan for checking to make sure that I'm okay and that they can get me help if I need it? Yeah. What about when I'm in the car driving to Brandon? Yeah. What about when I am here at 5:30 and no one else is? Also, yes, all of those things count. I am the only worker employed at that workplace by my employer at that time. How many of you here today are the only person from your employer in this building? I see you, Michael. Absolutely. Each and every one of you, by definition, is working alone. Your employer is responsible for making sure that you get here safe, that they know that you're safe, and if you need help, that they can get it to you. Is there a plan for that? Maybe attending conferences is a little bit less hazardous than some of the other activities that your organization goes through, but it's not immune to incidents and injuries. If you are not directly supervised by the employer or another person designated as a supervisor at that time, Reg is being closely watched by Janelle all day. We try not to let Reg out unsupervised. As natural sunlight hurts his eyes. So if Reg is being supervised, every once in a while he gets stuck in the car for me and we come and we make a video for you and it's very exciting. But at that moment, we are not working alone. Reg is not working alone. He's being directly supervised. If Reg comes visits you on your own, we're sorry that he escaped. But we have to have a plan to manage his safety that whole time through. When he is out there on his own, even though he may be, in your front pocket the whole day, he is working alone for the purposes of the legislation.
I'll just maybe add one thing there too, is that, like sometimes we've had it where people are asking, well, I go to, we got people out on a work site somewhere and it's their contractor working. And yes, the contractor's safety site plan is applicable to, your staff that might be there and something like that. But certainly they could even ask you, well, what is your organization's working alone plan for yourself? Because it's, again, it's not their responsibility to be, checking on you at their site, so that's where kind of, again, to speak to the requirements of the employer.
Absolutely. Now, working in isolation from the legislation means working where assistance is not readily available in the event of an injury. Essentially, if your employees are too far away from whoever it is that's responsible for their safety under the legislation and your policy, for them to see if they get into trouble, for them to hear if they get into trouble. If you've got that one operator in the back corner on evening shift that runs and you got that one piece of critical equipment, and then everything else happens over here and you've got a supervisor here and he maybe sees that employee once a day, that worker's working in isolation. If they get into trouble and they need help, it's not readily available. If I get a paper cut, which is about the worst injury that I get anymore, except for sneezing, because I'm over 40. You sneeze, you're wrecked. But the paper cut, and I say, ouch, 17 people in the office here. I'm not very tough, and it really hurts, so I yell loud. But 17 people were here. If I'm in the back corner of any one of your shops and I get that same paper cut and say, ouch, who's going to hear me? What if it's more serious than a paper cut? So those are the things that we're looking at. We've got multi-shift. We've got companies that are running round the clock. We've got companies that have a special weekend shift. And so the amount of supervision that you're providing to your employees matters for this chunk of the legislation. Why don't you do this one? This is a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. So, I mean, we've covered some of the definitions, an important part to start when we're getting into now the actual part 9 of the working alone, here in Manitoba, working alone or working in isolation regulations. We kind of broken it down. There's kind of 4 main parts of this, identifying risks and taking steps to eliminate these risks. These are common with all parts of your, your safety management systems and different regulations. Developing those safe work policies and procedures and providing training on those is something I'll be talking about very briefly coming up as well, but absolutely a huge part of this. Establishing effective forms of communication. So having a way to communicate with your staff member that might be a risk. We need to have something in place for that. And then point 4 is, and I've kind of highlighted that, is, communication must include a system of regular contact appropriate to the risk and the proper intervals. And that system of regular contact is really, that's the challenge, right? How do we do that? How do we ensure that that's happening in a consistent and reliable way to ensure that, we're keeping people protected and that we're meeting this requirement. So, and then other, concepts are how to check in with the lone worker, what to do when they're not responding. So another key part. And then that last one too is, that proof of due diligence with all parts. Again, I keep going back to your whole system. We need to have that audit trail for compliance reasons and proof of due diligence. One of the first things any workplace safety and health are going to ask if there ever is an incident is, show me what you've been doing. Show us. So we can say we're doing things, but do we have proper records?
Speaking of due diligence, Theo, is there any place on the audit that asks for documentation connected to working alone or in isolation? Seeing lots of head nods. Is it mandatory or is it optional? Do the points count? Absolutely. which section of the audit is the section that creates the most challenges for our member companies? That's where you find the working alone. Absolutely. Element N. This is a program that's going to help you as part of your continuous improvement on the Safe Work certified audit.
There's 44 parts of the regulations, all of them very important. You review those. I mean, we like to look at this maybe as a, it is a common hazard. When you look at the definitions, it exists. And, we can't really pick and choose which parts of the regulations we're going to choose to obey sort of thing. It's one of those ones that we kind of go, we maybe overlooked that a little bit, but I kind of look at it as like this PPE, make sure you got PPE for your lone workers. You know about PPE and all different other ways, but what do we have in place to protect our lone workers?
Okay, so this is the first one that having a long, successful career in any profession means that you've had the opportunity to make lots of mistakes. This is one of mine. We had a dip tank. And the worker was wearing supplied air. Sorry, I wrote SCBA. It should have been SABA. We had a big long hose connected to the worker, connected to the mask, and they drag it around all over the place. If you've got those in your shop, don't forget you've got to be getting them tested every 6 months. Not annually, it's every 6 months. This worker and this dip tank, if their mask came off and they were exposed, they could be overcome. So you don't want the next time you find that worker to be when they're lying on the ground and it's shift change. So we had to have a way to regularly monitor this worker in a particular closed space without being in that closed space. CCTV wasn't really a thing back then, and it hurts my heart to admit that we didn't all walk around with cameras in our pockets, and installing cameras meant $5,000-$6,000, and then at the end of that, who's watching the camera? So it really wasn't a good option. What we had was a pendant, and that pendant was connected to our alarm panel. And so if ever the worker pushed the button, it would send a signal to the panel would send it to the 911, and then the fire department should show up. There's only so many times the worker leaning over the side of the tank and accidentally triggering the alarm before the fire department, they get kind of salty about it. And I understand it, because they're coming out 3-4 times in the summer and they're getting all dressed up and excited because they're coming to something good, and what it is a false alarm. We paid a lot of money in false alarms, which is a ridiculous thing to put an expense in. We didn't have anything else. Best we could have done is somebody looking in through a window in the side of the wall. Randy, how could you solve that today? How could you have made my life easier 17 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, that's, those are a challenge. But again, I think it comes back to, where you can have put a system in place where, it could be right at the workstation where, regular safety checks are occurring through, whether it's a tablet at that workstation where the person can just tap a check-in button to check in when they want. Again, that meets those requirements. The thing about that pendant, that we were chatting about that earlier too, is that person has to, some of those have fall detection and those things, those are great features in them, but person has to do something. That really doesn't meet the regulations. The regulations say that you need to be checked, that system of regular contact. So
in the event of unconsciousness, push this button.
yeah.
That's not a good plan. That's tough to defend.
Yeah. So having those regular safety checks and appropriate, having given, your staff maybe the ability to adjust frequency of safety checks based on the risks that they're doing. And maybe they need safety checks much more often if they're doing this task, or less often if they're doing this. To having that quick ability to do that, they don't respond. I mean, really, all those regular safety checks too. I mean, as long as people are responding, you don't need to know about those. That's where you can use technology now to take care of all that. It's just going to happen. But when people aren't responding, that's when you want to know, and that's where systems are out there that you can, you will know, you will get notified. So hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. What other options? Think about your shop. Truck drivers, IT staff. Everyone here has IT staff. Where are your IT staff right now? Nobody, well, we keep ours in the back, again, under full supervision at all times. However, we've got somebody in Toronto who's somewhere doing something, I think. We love VJ. I don't know what he's doing or if he's okay. Your yard workers, your mobile equipment operators. There's somebody out doing sales. We love sales staff. They're great. Are they okay? Are they on the side of the road with an accident? Are the logos on the car the right way up or the wrong way? Folks working from home, security staff. A lot of companies have security staff. A lot of them don't have 2, 3, or 4 on at a time. Whether they're your own employees or they're contractors, how are you managing their safety? Crane operators. I once had a crane operator. He was very mad when he finally came down. We lost power December 10th as he was out in the yard picking up scrap, which wouldn't have been a problem except the heater and the radio were powered by electricity. So it was about an hour and a half after lunch when the furnace operator went, I didn't see Dennis at lunch. Has anyone seen Dennis? Someone pokes their head out the door and it's -20. It's normal Winnipeg winter. And there's Dennis fussing and waving his fist just as excitedly as he can from the crane, trying to get someone to hear that the crane's power is out and he's stuck and he's hungry and he has to pee. Dennis was miserable for several weeks after that. Getting help to the people who need it, even if it's, hey, I seem to have lost power. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, from my career too, you know, from people working isolation in a plant there, I won't relay the story right now just from a time perspective, but yeah, that exact incident where, you know, somebody's, you know, it's like they're out of line of sight, they're out of being heard, you know, their buddy isn't tasked with checking on them at that other workstation, and an incident occurs and, you know, they are injured and unconscious and, you know, that sort of thing. You know, my own career heading out to sites, you know, I see, or, you know, manufacturing facility, you know, people in the yard stop building loads, that sort of thing too. Lots of examples, but so yeah, it's prevalent. It's just something that we need to ensure that we're taking care of. This maintenance team I see there. So me,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
you know, essentially, I think we just kind of spoke to that. You know, exactly that. So something to consider. This is
Well, this is one of my favorites. This is one of the ones that I did the worst. We had an overnight worker, a couple of heat treating furnaces running. So things, stop smiling, Alex. 15 feet high, 15 feet across, 30 feet deep, natural gas all day, heating up metal to make sure it comes to the right temperature so we can dunk it in the water as soon as and it's got to heat up for 12 hours, 14 hours, 15 hours to get the right structures in there when we dump it in the cold water bath. This particular worker, because we don't run full production after 4 o'clock. There's nobody. There's just that guy. Well, that guy had some medical conditions that made not only the chances of an incident, whether it be medical or something work-related, harder to manage. It would also create the opportunity for worse outcomes. Tripping down the stairs was going to be something that was catastrophic. Cell phone reception wasn't great. We would have needed about 9 repeaters because the first thing I thought of was, well, we had that pendant that might have checked a box, wouldn't have solved the issue, but would have checked the box that we did something. But it was like 9 repeaters we would have had to put up and it would have been a crappy solution anyway. So what did we do? Well, we did the thing that we'd been doing for 10 years or 15 years or 100 years. I'm not sure how long it was at that point. We wrote a piece of paper. And I realized that about the 4th month that the supervisors had everything filled out except the date, and they would photocopy that sheet and then just put a new date on it at the start of each week. It took me a long time. I was, hey, wait a second. That's the exact same thing. So the supervisors had, okay, Doug's going to phone me every 3 hours or 4 hours, and that'll be good. If he doesn't phone me, I'll check in. Sometimes Doug forgot to phone. Do you think the supervisor ever checked in? No. Do you think the supervisor ever picked up the phone at 11 o'clock at night, knowing they're back into the shop at 6? No. Were you any more successful at that than I was? I failed 100%. I was batting 1,000. Can we have them run the crane? Like, we don't want them just sitting there staring at a computer screen going, yep, still 1900 degrees Fahrenheit for 8 hours. Can we have him shovel? No, he's going to give himself a heart attack. Can we have him run the crane? No, look at those stairs. And then what if he has problems in the crane? What about the forklift? Oh my goodness, we've already heard about forklifts, skid steer, table saw. Can we get him to do anything? No. This worker in that instance did not have help. There was no help in the event of an emergency. And the likelihood of an emergency I chose this foundry picture on purpose. This was a foundry. There's nothing easy or quick or risk-free in the foundry environment. I'm looking around at several familiar faces who can say, well, yeah. So what did we have them do? We had them sit there and stare at the computer screen for 8 hours every day, and our supervisors pretended that they were getting a call from him a few times a night, and he pretended that it was working and it was good, but it wasn't.
So I mean, yeah, it's not illegal to work alone. It may be in some high risk situations you can't, you wouldn't do that. But in some cases we can have people work alone or in isolation if we have the proper control measures in place. Using that monitoring, having a person be the person responsible. That's where having technology ensure the safety checks are occurring, having maybe a monitoring center providing that 24/7. I mean, having an individual try to control this themselves. I mean, boy, what a responsibility if they're, having someone there, the person taking that call at 2 a.m. and making sure they're not missing a notification. But there's lots of solutions within a manufacturing facility. We got Wi-Fi to implement technology nowadays to do things, Wi-Fi or, landline. But again, to ensure that those regular safety checks are occurring. So I think that's
absolutely.
Yeah.
And think about your own plant's cell phone reception versus Wi-Fi reception. Your bosses want to get a hold of you by email at all times. That Wi-Fi in the plant is crispy. Whereas cell phone maybe or maybe not. But the two of them working together, that's gonna push you a little bit forward. And this one I mentioned, this one we saw a little while ago. During the day, there's 115 people on shift that are production workers. They're covering about 100,000 square feet of plant. And there's 17 different people in leadership roles: the supervisors, the safety person, the divisional manager, the value stream manager, the maintenance supervisor and manager. And then at 4 o'clock, poof, they're gone. And it's one supervisor. And that critical equipment still needs to run. We don't need everyone doing the process, but we need a stack of those parts ready for processing in the morning. It takes us 12 hours to produce 10 of these things. It takes us 2 hours to process 10 of those things. So they keep running. That means that the evening shift supervisor is responsible for every single square foot that the day shift supervisors are, but there's one of them. So for 3:59, he's lacing up his running shoes, and that 4 o'clock bell goes and he starts running. So he's literally seeing the shop twice. 2 loops, that's all he's got time for. You're checking in with the people. Hey, how's it going? How's the quality? Do you need anything? How's your PPE? And there's problems at every step, and then it's lunchtime. Then once he's finished his high carb, high performance athlete lunch, it's right back. Got to get running again. Those workers that are only seeing the supervisors twice per shift, those workers are working in isolation. That's all there is to it. And you got to have a plan.
What a great story there, Nathan. Yeah, I mean, it's so applicable in large, any facility, but large manufacturing facilities. So, yeah, So again, very nature of working alone is a hazard. We have to put systems of control in place. There's employer, responsibilities. We need to ensure we have that system of regular contact and that proof of due diligence. So, so we've presented, some challenges with folks here and kind of reviewed the regulations. Now we're going to move on part 2 here a little bit about what is, an effective and affordable solution. And, we've really kind of broken this up into 3 key components of this. And first and foremost, basically have a system of regular contact, the operational system in place. And this is where, if we have time, we might do a quick demo of our app, but for you can kind of have that end user experience. There's other parts of, a comprehensive system that will have administrator dashboard and all that sort of thing as well. But so the operational system, ensures that those regular safety checks are occurring, that allows people to signal for help with an emergency. If there is an emergency, they can tap an emergency button. Other two parts of this too is to have those, as I spoke about earlier, and we're not going to get into the specifics of working on policies and procedures and development of all your policies and procedures today, but a critical part, right? That roadmap of, it gets engagement from the employees of, what is this all about? Why do I need this? How is this going to help me? So we need to make sure that that's defined for them and when they should be using it. And all of that builds that culture of safety. I think that's such an important part of, all our organizations, and it takes responsibility from everybody, management to, and that experience of people, newcomers. I heard that presentation today, and I think that's an important thing. As we're all looking for employees and want to retain people and have them stick around our organizations. And so they have to come into an organization, they feel they have the ability to speak freely and ask questions and if there are language barriers or whatever it is. But so building that culture of safety, it's only going to help your organization. Time and time again, you can see how the benefits of that, and companies that are buying from you, they want to deal with a company that has that same culture too. So just a little different slide, kind of the three key components harnessed in the regulations. So let's talk a little bit about, we've reviewed the hazard exists. We've identified associated risks. We know the requirements of the employer now when we look at the definitions and the requirements of work at the Part 9 here in Manitoba. And so, how best do we manage this hazard? And what does your company do if you have a system in place?
I can tell you a little bit about what our company does. We use the Checkmate app. I'm the direct supervisor for the Made Safe team that comes out and visits you. And the simple fact is, I'm tough to get a hold of. If you're waiting for an email from me currently, I apologize. I swear I'm going to get back to you eventually, probably. But that also means that my team has difficulties getting a hold of me. It's fine when I'm sitting in the office, but when I'm at your sites, when I'm at Safe Work, tucked away in a meeting, I may or may not be able to respond to those phone calls. I need help. And so having the, I don't know if we call it the switchboard, having the automated response, hey, it's time to check in. The team checks in. Okay, good. I don't hear about all of the check-ins. I don't hear about the 15 check-ins per day. I hear about the one missed check-in per month, which is the best thing in the world for me. Thanks, Randy.
Yeah, that's, so, we talk about that. This is, we kind of broke it up between the in-house solution that we often try to develop or might hear about versus what we might call a professional system. And, some of the many challenges that you hear about from in-house systems, it has to be developed by the organization, has to relies on people trying to remember to do things all the time, and how, it takes up people's time, both from the, the person tasked with trying to maybe make these check-ins, a person in the field. If they're sort of these ad hoc solutions sometimes put people at risk, that needs to be documented, and that can be very time consuming, if not impossible. So often, sometimes, first of all, even the system itself, I mean, I will have folks come to me and they'll say, we're looking for a solution here because, I don't even know who's working alone and when they're working alone. That's sometimes where we start with a conversation with folks that are kind of tasked with this. So there are ways to, again, where we can implement technology and we'll kind of get into that in a moment. But yeah, so very costly as well for both from a time perspective. What about implementing more of a professional safety monitoring solution? And there's many benefits to it. Again, using technology, to kind of speak to Nathan's point there, it can just ensure that these safety checks are occurring at the appropriate risk. or sorry, at the appropriate frequency based on the risk. You know, I think there's benefits to having that monitoring perspective of it. There are ways to use the technology where it's kind of like fully automated, but to kind of have that backup of our, you know, say a monitoring center for something like this can be very beneficial as well, because there might be times when, you know, that notification is not, you know, to say, if you're the person that's the alert contact and you might miss that notification, you might be busy. So to have that live monitoring can be important. It has to be simple to use, right? That's probably most importantly. People want to have that real simple method of doing this. They don't want to have, and they don't want to have it take up a lot of their time. And that's where, you know, tap for safety, we kind of say it's simple tap of a button that can really help. Some other features there, but I won't get into all of them right now. We were going to quickly demonstrate sort of, so we have developed our Checkmate working loan safety monitoring service. Our company provides this to, you know, many clients in different industries across Canada, manufacturing, of course, being one of them. Part of our system now, and it can be, you know, we developed our system 20 years ago, long before the days of smart devices and apps. And Checkmate still functions in a lot of ways the way it once did in the past, really tied to a phone number to get this initially set up. But you don't need the app, but it's the most common way that people are interfacing with the system nowadays for people that have that smart device. It's a free app for anybody that's set up with the device. We'll just quickly, you know, I mean, we had it up on the screen here, but it's really as simple as, you know, if you develop, it can be set up on different types of schedules where it could be more automated schedule, but most commonly it might be on a user managed schedule. And really to start safety checks, you know, based on your policies and procedures that you've developed for your team. So if they need to start their safety checks, they would just simply tap the activate button, and that would start the safety checks for that individual. And you can see right now, this is set for a default frequency. That's what we talk about. So what it would start up at, and that can be customized, you know, it could start up at every hour, it could start up at every half an hour.
And for our team, what we do is we will start it, and then how long is it going to take us to drive to your shop? And then we set it at ever so slightly more than that time. If it's going to,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so a great feature, yeah, ability to change frequency, you know, based on your risk. So although it might start up at a certain frequency, you would have the ability to, this is a little different than, but yeah, so let's say every half an hour, oh, sorry, right there, say okay here, and you're going to notice that the time now just changed to half an hour. And a great feature of this service is that you don't have to wait for that time to expire. You can do a proactive check-in as a user as often as you want. And just by tapping that check-in button there, I maybe took too long to, I'm blaming this on the smart board.
It's the smart board.
What am I doing here? Go to the phone.
Yeah, it might have been the phone. Reg, how hard do we have to tap it? Aggressive, right?
Oh, that's
Yes.
okay. The ability to change frequency is there. Every time you're doing a check-in, every time you're activating or deactivating, it's recording a GPS pin of your location. There's a ways to put in written text descriptions in there as well. So location information, as I mentioned, is very important. So you can even do voice recordings into the system. All of this is captured in the history for the administrator. So if you're an administrator of your account, you'd have a dashboard. You can see all your users' activity. You can get usage reports. There's all that history is there. And really what it allows is that system of regular contact to occur, regular safety checks occurring. You're not being kind of bothered with those mundane sort of regular safety checks. You're not doing them for one thing yourself. So that's freeing up you to do much more important things than doing regular safety checks. But as soon as there is an incident, now you are getting notified, and for those, you know, so that we can ensure that those people are getting that timely assistance. So it kind of, in a very user-friendly, very effective way, very cost-effective way too. That's an important part of this, is that, you know, it has to make sense that you can put in a type of system like this. So please feel free to reach out to me afterwards too. There's I think we had that handout. I was going to talk about that later too, but the handout there, yeah, has the QR code there. We're linked into the MadeSafe website too, or you can reach out to me directly and we can, we're just here. I was telling, I think, some of the folks here, it's really just about helping people. And if you have a challenge, there's no obligation. Yeah, 20, did I say 20?
10.
10, okay, 10 minutes.
So here at MadeSafe, I'm responsible. Do you want to get the next thing set up for the demo? I think everyone's here and I'll cover.
Yeah, we'll get into this here briefly.
So here at MadeSafe, we've got 15 people going in all different directions. And sometimes we forget to activate the app. And so I could call them and say, Mariam, it's happened again. You forgot to set the app. Or my favorite thing is I start the day opening up the schedule and opening up the Protelec dashboard, the Checkmate app dashboard. And I go in and say, who's supposed to be checked in, who is currently checked in, and anyone that has not activated their app that should have, I go check, 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 activate. And then they get a surprise alarm in the next 5 minutes because they go, oh yeah, right. That's the thing I forgot. It's really effective at getting those behaviors. I don't think we've had folks forget for months because it only takes 2 or 3 in a raised eyebrow to get oh yeah, right, I gotta hit that button. It's so simple to manage, so easy.
There's auto activate features as well in there where it would just automatically come on at a certain time for a person. They can still turn it on and off throughout the day if they want to, but it would turn on always at the same time, or there's even set schedules. But yeah.
Yeah, that
So
would be awesome as well.
we give up, we give out free trials too, like of this. Actually, we're going to talk about health and safety incident reporting too. That's another one. Like, I mean, I always say just, give something a try. See, there's zero obligation. Just how better to kind of experience what something's all about. If it can help you do things in better ways, ensure that your people, most importantly, are protected, and ensure that your company is protected too, that you're meeting those regulatory requirements, which are there, that exist. Good. We're going to move on to this very quickly. We have had, over the years, I mentioned that we have our 24/7 emergency monitoring center. And over the years, we've always kind of done some level of after hours call answering. And we've had more and more clients coming to us now lately with this problem. They have some sort of system in place, their calls people are being put on hold for long periods of time. Calls are getting dropped, and they're coming to us with a different, looking for a solution. And we kind of, thought about this too. And we thought, what happens is there's always going to be times when there's high call volume events. And, to have some manpower issues, that's always a traditional call center services. That's always going to be a challenge, right? So we developed a different way of approaching this. And it's something that has been and we've taken this after hours call answering and turned it into actually through a request of one of our clients in the health and safety department to an incident reporting system. And they're starting to provide more folks that service as well. But really what this service does is it uses, it uses IVR technology and where, interactive voice response, also a web form. There's an exact mimic of it in a web form. There's folks that will want to, rather than making calls, they want to go to a computer and enter in the same data into a computer. But really it's your system. It's branded to you. It uses IVR technology and acceptance of that for folks. If you have very clear messaging, that tells the caller exactly what's going to happen here. We're going to collect this key information and you can customize that information for whatever you want it to say. And, and our health and safety team is going to get notified immediately and they're going to follow up with you within, X amount of time. If it's clear, then people, and they can make that, or report that incident. Could be a maintenance request. This can be used in a lot of different ways, but it can be very widely accepted. It's done efficiently. The same information is collected each and every time the same way. And it really allows the people that are there to respond more time versus, taking time to go through all that to really provide the response, which is the more important part of this. So we, developed the after-hour call answering. We have turned that now into health and safety incident reporting. And what I'm going to do here is quickly do a quick demo of this if we got a few more minutes. So I'm going to call into this number.
MadeSafe, now's the time to turn your phone's ringers back on and all the way up as a demonstration.
So this is just a quick sampling, and I'm going to put my, hopefully this will pick up on the mic here.
You have reached MaidSafe's Health and Safety Incident Reporting Line.
Right?
Once we have your information, an incident report will be submitted to your Health and Safety Department, who will follow up with you shortly. Please answer the following questions and wait for confirmation before hanging up. Select the type of incident. For safety concern, press 1. After the beep, record your first and last name, including your position or employee number. When done, press pound.
Randy Pokrant.
Using your keypad, please provide your 10-digit phone number, followed by the pound sign. Please provide the date and time of the incident. When done, press pound.
June 13th at 1:40 p.m.
Please provide the specific location and details of the incident. When done, press pound.
The MaidSafe office, there was some ice on their front steps and I nearly slipped.
Was first aid or medical attention required? For yes, press 1. For no, press 2. To repeat these options, press. Thank you. An incident report has been created and submitted to your Health and Safety Department for follow-up. Goodbye.
So that is the, the example of
that boop, 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 that's me getting Randy's report.
So what happens is now your health and safety team can instantly be notified of that event. It can be done to a group of people. It can be done in a staggered way. And it basically provides, and actually I should go back to the next slide here. So it provides basically a text message like that. And it has a link that if you select the link, it'll take you right to that where it has all that information. So I'm not sure if I have that slide up here or not. I might not have included that, but I'll speak to that in a moment. But yeah, so it has, all that information I left. You can customize that, of course. You can collect whatever. That was just a sampling of what kind of information that you could collect. But in the health and safety, it can be used for other types of reporting. The ability that people that, the one of the school divisions, they had a min person that was still trying to write paper copies and do this. And of course, they go for lunch or they're not there in the evenings. Teachers want to report things when they got time, and that's after hours. So 24/7, there's no hold time, very simple to use. And then there's this instant notification ability, and it can be where that ends there with that notification. You can acknowledge the incident, and I don't know if anybody's done that or not, but
I haven't acknowledged it yet, but on my end, as the safety, there's the follow-up. On my end, as the safety person, this is what I hear.
June 13th at office, there was some ice on their front steps and I nearly slipped.
So
and then it's got a very brief report where in past, someone has to fill out a green card. Maybe they tell you about it, maybe you don't. How many of us in here have gotten an improvement order for failure to notify of serious incident? This can go to as many people as you want.
yeah, exactly, and staggered, and it can end there with that with that notification where it's acknowledged. But you could also put a time frame in there where, for instance, if your team or if nobody had acknowledged that within 10 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it might be, whatever you want, then it could go to our live monitoring, and now our operators would follow up again with live response to ensure that that incident is being captured, and that, and there's a dashboard, a complete history. It allows, administrators and health and safety departments to go in there and have all this on an electronic record versus, and that you can start to take action and make sure that, these critical could be something that's very critical to, of course, health and safety, could be critical to your operations. If a
machine breakdowns after hours
is going out of whack, or I shouldn't, that's maybe not the right term, but you know what I mean, as some parameters, and it needs to be addressed. So
For this, let's say, put it up. I didn't see anyone download.
you work with us and we come up with
You have, it can't be deleted or?
No, it's in your, so if you're an administrator, you have access to your dashboard, which is. It frees up here.
Might be, I think we're pretty close to the end of.
So I'll just say to you, so you have access to dashboard and you have all the complete history here. You can see that the web form is exactly the same. The person going on a computer can enter the same information and the process of, the exact same thing would occur. Text messages, notifications to people. And this is happening exactly. So I'll tell you what. Best thing in the world is that when you start before you leave, get him to come out and show you a demo of what it will look like. Yeah, it's a really handy tool.
Is the report to first party on
So we'll have to check.
You can download the.
Yeah, it's like Aaron said, I don't think
If it's something you're interested in, again, trials, and feel free to reach out to me. We can chat with you guys more about this. And appreciate your time, everyone. Reg, questions about the chat?
What's the cost of the check made up, and is it paid per use, or is it a monthly or a yearly subscription?
We always get that question, and it would be potentially for a small group, maybe per user. One single user, let's just round it up to $20 a month or something like that per user. But we really work with organizations. We understand sometimes they have large groups. We're protecting 100 or 200 or 300 people. They have some that are very frequent users of the system, others that are very infrequent. They're only at risk at certain times. So we will look at providing them their look. They're saying, well, we want to pay $150 to protect these 100 people, and we can do that. And it really drives that price down. And so it's, we're talking cents per day, or literally 50 cents, 75 cents a day. It becomes a minimal cost and really can free up a lot of people's time. So I hope that answers. Work with us. We'll try to come up with the best options for you.
Does it have to be on a smartphone? Can it be on a computer or a tablet instead?
Yeah, it's really tied to a phone number. So we give you a 10-digit phone number, and then there's different ways to interface with the system. So the app is just one way, but you could work through the texting option. You can work through a computer. You check in and activate and do all that through a web-based.
Cell phones on shop floors.
Yeah, could be a desk phone.
Okay.
So it might require where someone is doing, they activate frequency set for something, they're doing their task, and you have to go back every 30 minutes, walk over and tap a button on a computer, or check in on the computer, or make a call. They can call in through the auto attendant or send a text or whatever. So I get that. So yeah, that's what becoming more common, where there's a fixed workstation where it's tied to Wi-Fi, and it's just tap a button. Yeah, but.
All right, folks, we are at break time, but not for Randy. Randy doesn't get to go for break. We are going to take a 10-minute break. Our book friend at Protelec, if you're in Zoom, email him. And for everyone in person, feel free to call him. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah, that was a long take home from this presentation here. The work of the presentation handout. So please feel free to take that home. The QR code goes to the MaidSafe website, kind of recap what we talked about when we're working alongside. There's a couple other areas that I can go. But the thing is, what I will do, but that's fantastic. And it's my card for now. MaidSafe knows how to get a hold of me, but and feel free to, we're here to go.
Easier. That's small questions today that you've got. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Get restarted at 2 o'clock. Thank you very much.